so traumatized, it makes me wanna cry. You dumb motherfucker, I loved you, I loved you, I loved you.
Craigslist stories that should be wiped from our memory. Number 3, Michelle Wilkins. Warning, this is a really dark case. On March 18th, 2015, Michelle Wilkins, who was 7 months pregnant, responded to a Craigslist ad stating that they were selling baby clothes in Boulder County, Colorado. She arrived at Donnell Lane's home where they talked about her pregnancy, and a little later on, Donnell lured her down to her basement, claiming that is where the baby clothes were. On their way down, that is when Donnell attacked her.
Hit her over the head with a lava lamp, which broke in its thick glass. She took a piece of the lava lamp, Michelle in the neck with it, and as it was flirting from Michelle's neck, she choked her, pushed her down on the bed, held a pillow over her until she was unconscious, cut Aurora, the baby, out. Aurora by then was, and carried Aurora upstairs and laid her dead in the bathtub.
To everyone's shock, Michelle did survive this brutal attack, however, her baby did not. Donnell, with tears filling her eyes, was sentenced to 100 years in prison, and honestly, that is exactly what she deserves.
This happened this year. You're not even gonna believe this, bro. This girl, I think she just graduated college. Out of college, she was gonna be working at Microsoft soon.
Damn, that's crazy.
Right? So her life was looking hella good. She ends up taking a trip with one of her homegirls to Germany. So they go to Germany and they're just going out there, you know, just as tourists and just to see what's good with everything. This guy, random German dude that's out there, dude's like, oh, okay, well, yeah, but I mean, I know like everywhere out here. You know what I mean? Like if you guys want to see like a cool spot, and they're like, oh, okay, like let's go see what's good with it. He takes the girls to this like bridge, right? And they're just like kind of looking at the stuff, everything like that. While they're all just chilling, looking at the site, he tries to SA the girl, the 21-year-old, because it's her and her friend. Her friend's 22. Her homegirl is like grabbing the and like hitting him and trying to stop him and stuff. He's getting so frustrated of like, like she's not letting me do it. He throws both of these girls off the bridge, a 615-foot cliff, bro. Off of, and I'm telling you right now, bro, the craziest shit.
This is one of the worst cases in human history. This is the murder of Christine Siluan. She was from the Philippines and was a volunteer in church, and she used the church every day from 4 to 6 p.m. On the day of her murder, she went to church as per her schedule, but she didn't come home after that. Her parents then started to worry, and they began searching for her with their neighbors. And what they found is absolutely horrid. They found her body in a farm where half her face was sliced like a piece of pizza, and her face was literally skinned down to her skull. Also, her brain was completely destroyed by acid. The police then started investigating, and they checked the cameras and found out that she was with a guy. The people started protesting about this case, and the case was then given to special officers. They had a lot of pressure on this. A week before this happened, she broke up with her boyfriend, so the police took him into custody, and he was proving that he was at home all day when she was murdered, but officers were completely tired of this case, and they then sentenced him as the murderer. But after a few months, a thief was caught in a store where he confessed that he murdered and raped Christine. He said he started talking to her on Facebook with a fake account and was using fake photos of another guy that was pretty good looking. Christine fell for the guy, and she assumed that he was about 20 years old, and they started texting daily. One day, they both decided to meet up at 6 p.m. near the church she went to. But upon arriving, Christine noticed that this was not the guy she was talking to, and he was around 40-ish years old. She then refused to talk to him and tried to go back, but he held her hands extremely forcefully. He then took her far away from town and raped her repeatedly and put iron rods inside her personal organs. He then cut her face in half and then skinned her whole head down to the skull. And to make it even worse, he put acid inside of her head. The autopsy also revealed that her tongue, trachea, esophagus, parts of her neck, and her right ear were missing. The self-proclaimed killer of this case, named Renato Lanis, said that he used barber-type scissors and stabbed her 30 times on different parts of her body and skinned her face. Christine Siluan was only 16 years old, and this case is extremely haunting. There's a picture of her body that was found in the field, but Google did a really good job of not showing it and hiding it. So even if you do go looking for the picture, I don't think you're going to find it. This is one of those cases that after you get done reading it, you just feel some sort of uneasiness. I feel so bad for Christine's family, and I can't imagine finding my daughter in this state. May Christine Siluan rest in peace.
Things that bother you, they never bother me.
Happy and fine.
I will be showing the video, but nonetheless, hi, my name is Ethan, and here's everything you need to know in under 1 minute. In September of 2017, 31-year-old Laura Wallen vanished into thin air. Her boyfriend Tyler Tessier had played the part of the worried boyfriend desperate for answers. However, he was living a double life. He had a fiance, and he feared that Laura would expose her pregnancy. The night of her unaliving, Laura texted her friend and stated, "Tyler has taken me to an open field in Damascus. I'm not sure why we're here, but it's in the middle of nowhere." Her body was found a few days later. Sam and Colby eventually uploaded a video where they were in the same area at the same time, and they captured a woman begging for help. Here's the video.
Did you get that?
Yeah, I got them. Somebody is screaming.
Someone's screaming bloody murder.
Whoa. Guys, what the you hear that?
What do you guys think?
Found dead. She must have been out of her head.
Danielle Bell needs your help. Her sister reached out to me and shared disturbing details news outlets won't, as she believes something much more sinister happened. Danielle was last seen on Friday, September 28th, 2001, and Alfredo Sanchez and Danielle had sparked up an intimate relationship. At the time, she was 14 years old and he was 24 years old. 2 weeks before she went missing, she told her mother that she was pregnant with his baby. Could he have freaked out at the fact that he got a 14-year-old pregnant and did something to Danielle? Police questioned Alfredo, but he had a solid alibi, stating that he was at his cousin's house, hadn't contacted Danielle for over 2 weeks, and his cousin confirmed. Until 6 years later, his cousin recanted and stated that he was not with her that day. Police arrested him for lying to investigators and having lewd behavior towards minors, but no charges for the vanishing of Danielle. 24 years later, and she is still missing. The case has gone cold, but for the sake of her family, share this video and let's get some answers.
This woman became so obsessed with true crime that she brutally murdered someone just out of curiosity. This story needs a massive trigger warning, as this photo is not what it seems. This is Young Yu Young, a 23-year-old woman described as a recluse who lived with her grandfather in South Korea. Young became so obsessed with true crime TV shows and books that she spent months plotting the murder of a stranger. She finally settled on a victim who was 26 years old and whose name has never been publicly released after contacting 54 other women on a tutoring app. She posed as a mother who was looking for someone to teach her daughter English, and she would message each tutor to see if they taught lessons alone and out of their own home. After contacting 54 other women, she finally found her victim, who did in fact live alone and agreed to help her daughter. So she set up a date in May of this year and arrived to the victim's home in Busan, posing as a young student dressed in a school uniform. And when the victim let her in, she proceeded to stab her over 100 times, most of which occurred after the victim was already dead. Young then went to the store to purchase garbage bags and bleach, and then she returned back to the home where she dismembered the victim. She even cut off her fingers in an attempt to delay identification. Young then stuffed the body parts into suitcases, changed into the victim's clothes, and was seen on CCTV going in and out of the victim's home multiple times with the bloodstained suitcase. She then called a taxi who took her to the Nakdong River, where she dumped some of the remains in a secluded park. In an attempt to make it look like the woman just disappeared, Young also kept her phone, ID, and wallet, and she thought she committed the perfect crime, but she was very wrong. On top of being caught on CCTV leaving the victim's home, Young was also acting very strange in the taxi drive to the river, and the driver even saw the bloodstained suitcase. So they were the one to actually call police and report what they saw. And upon investigating, police discovered a gruesome scene. Many of the woman's body parts were found at the park, but some were also found at Young's home. Authorities also found that her search history consisted of looking up how to kill someone for months leading up to the murder, and she even rented books from the library on how to get rid of a body. Young was soon arrested, but her story changed multiple times. She first told police that she only moved the woman's body after someone else killed her, and then she told them that she actually killed the tutor during an argument. But she ultimately told the police that she murdered the woman out of pure curiosity and just to see what it was like after becoming obsessed with true crime TV shows and books. Young was charged with murder, desecration, and abandonment of a corpse, and prosecutors were originally wanting the death penalty because of how gruesome the crime was. Young pleaded for a more lenient sentence because she said she suffered from hallucinations and other mental health disorders at the time of the murder, but the judge ultimately ruled the murder was very premeditated and carefully planned, and instead she was sentenced to life in prison. In addition to that, she's also ordered to wear a tracking device for 30 years after. This kind of confused me, but from what I can find, those sentenced to life in prison in South Korea become eligible for parole after just 20 years behind bars. So I guess it's a real possibility for Young to be released early.
Was your throat cut? Yeah. Oh.
Grandma?
Oh my God.
I'm not gonna ask you any questions right now until we get.
The video that I just showed you was taken from the TikTok of Uvalde school shooter Salvador Ramos. Before the school shooting, Salvador displayed tons of red flags all across his online presence, and nobody said anything. And eerily enough, even though the content and profile picture has been deleted, Salvador's account is still up. Now, there were a lot of red flags displayed by this guy before the shooting occurred, including the fact that he was known on online social media platforms as Future School Shooter and School Shooter. But something else disturbing I want to touch on is the presence of Salvador Ramos fan accounts, especially here on TikTok. I find accounts like these to be extremely disgusting and morally reprehensible. And if you don't believe me that people are actually worshipping that demon, just take a look at some of these comments. They'll sicken you to your stomach. And what I'm going to show you next is even more disturbing. Yes, what you just saw was a Salvador Ramos edit, kind of a thirst trap for a school shooter. Now, I don't know why TikTok doesn't ban accounts like these. Not only are they so horrifically offensive to the families of those who lost children and loved ones that day, but they can also be dangerous and possibly even encourage people to commit similar atrocities. So TikTok, I'm calling on you to try to remove some of these accounts that glorify mass killers.
That girl performed an exorcism on her 3-year-old daughter, eventually ending her daughter's life. Areli Naomi woke up screaming in the middle of the night. Areli woke up her mom and her uncle, who was sleeping in the same bed as her and her mother. Claudia then picked up her baby girl and carried her back to sleep. However, Claudia thought that it was quite odd that her daughter would cry in the middle of the night, since she seldom does that. Areli would actually continue to cry in the middle of the night for the next 3 nights, waking up Claudia and Claudia's brother Rene, who, like I said earlier, would sleep in the same bed as them, with 3-year-old Areli in the middle. And it was at that point when both Claudia and her brother believed that Areli was possessed with a demon. They both then began to pray as Areli would cry and cry and cry. Then the brother had this bright idea to try to make Areli vomit. He wanted Areli to vomit the demon out of her. So Claudia sticks her fingers down Areli's throat, causing her daughter to vomit. Next day came and both Claudia and her brother Rene, and now Claudia's dad, believed that 3-year-old Areli was possessed by a demon. And it was at that point when Claudia decided that her daughter had to die, because Claudia received a vision from God that told her that God was going to get Areli. Then she had a vision of dropping her daughter off at the gates of heaven. So she planned out the execution and exorcism of her daughter. The 3 adults would end up taking Areli to a makeshift church in their backyard where Claudia's dad held the title as a preacher. And that's when they began their 20 grueling hours of torture on 3-year-old Areli. They performed an exorcism on her. The 3 adults grabbed her by her neck, torso, and legs, while smothering her repeatedly, attempting to pry open her mouth to make her vomit. And they held her with so much force that she had internal bleeding and injuries. Areli struggled to escape from her abusers. She clamped her mouth in resistance. During the assault, Areli repeatedly said, "I love you" to her mother. Areli would repeatedly go unconscious for moments at a time, which eventually resulted in her tragic death. The police would then be called 3 hours later. When cops arrived at their makeshift church, they found 3-year-old Areli dead on the floor. Areli's autopsy determined her death to have been a homicide, with asphyxia due to suffocation listed as the cause. Eventually, Claudia, her brother, and her dad were arrested, but not before Claudia posted a video on YouTube where she was laughing and smiling, talking about how she's gonna miss her daughter, but It is what it is, she says. Claudia Hernandez, Rene Jr. Hernandez, and Rene Hernandez have pleaded not guilty, and the county court is in the process of setting a trial date. This is an evil and disgusting act on an innocent child. The adults who thought that little Arely was possessed with a demon were the ones who were actually possessed by who knows what. Please remember this. The next time you think that God has said something to you, you need to make sure that it is not just you thinking these crazy things. Not everything that you hear in your head is God. I'm incredibly infuriated with this case. This was a child. This is not an act of God. What I also don't understand is that while there has been so many reported exorcisms, I have never heard of one where they purposely killed the child or killed the victim. Isn't the point of the exorcism to just drive out the demon in that person so that the person can live a normal life? I just don't understand. Rest in heaven, Arely. I don't know what came over your family, the people you loved and trusted so much. I'm sorry.
So this photo is the reason you shouldn't put your feet up on the dashboard of a car. In 2007, Granny Keeley had an airbag deploy on her at 120 miles an hour. She was sitting passenger with her feet up on the dash, and when the airbag went off, her knees went right into her skull. Obviously, this led to a brain injury. Her 2 front teeth also fell out, but she lived, thankfully. She lived without a forehead for about 2 years until surgeons fitted a ceramic forehead into her skull. She had near constant headaches, and she developed gallstones because of the medication she was on. After they fitted a ceramic plate into her forehead, they injected fat from her stomach into it so it could look more natural. This is her today, so she looks very normal now. And of course, because she's in good spirit, she says her ceramic forehead is designer because it was made in Italy. She also spent a considerable amount of time educating people on why they shouldn't put their feet up on the dashboard. Because if you do, you could end up like this. And you might not be so lucky. So, if you get anything from this video, stop putting your feet up on the dash. Let me know what you guys think about this in the comment section below. And as always, these videos are for informational and entertainment purposes only.
If you still use one of these things, you might want to take caution. In the mid-80s, 17-year-old Jason Finley was found deceased in his bedroom with zero evidence as to what happened. Jason was in good health, and there was no evidence in his room that would suggest there was any kind of foul play that night. It wasn't until an autopsy revealed blood in Jason's inner ear, which points to an electrical surge of some kind. And that's when the pieces of this puzzle finally started to come together. Jason happened to be on the phone while there was a bad thunderstorm that night, and all it took was for his house to be struck by lightning and that electricity to travel through his telephone wires. The girl that Jason was on the phone with also admitted to hearing a weird clicking noise, a gasp from Jason, and then silence, which that kind of makes sense. When I was a teenager, I remember thinking that this was a complete myth, but it's not. It actually has happened and claimed several lives. But thankfully, that risk has greatly reduced due to less and less people using these kinds of phones. Unless you're a cell phone user that decides to use your phone while it's charging during a power surge.
Like I'm dead, you killed me, I'm dead now. Shut up, Deku! Boo!
This is TikToker Claire Miller, and in 2021, she stabbed her sister to death. So back in 2021, Claire Miller was your average 14-year-old girl. She was normal, she went to school, she had friends, and she posted a lot of videos on TikTok where she accrued a small fan base. There are even still pages to this day devoted to reposting her old TikToks and sharing them. But Claire had a dark side that nobody ever noticed. And that dark side would lash out in the worst imaginable way in 2021. So Claire had an older sister named Helen. She was 19, Claire was 14, and sadly Helen had cerebral palsy, which, as you know, is a debilitating disease. But for some reason on February 2nd, 2021, Claire snapped. She grabbed a knife inside of her house and stabbed her 19-year-old sister, Helen, in the neck. Claire then called the police to turn herself in and was hysterical on the phone, claiming, "I killed my sister, you need to come here now." And when authorities arrived at her house, Claire was standing out front. She was covered in blood, there was blood in the snow, and her sister was found inside of the home with a knife still inside of her neck. Authorities have gone on the record after this murder and stated how this case is so unusual because it was a sister murdering her older sister, and Claire was so young when she committed this crime. She was only 14 years old. Now, obviously, Claire's parents were horrified to find out that this had happened. They not only lost one of their daughters, but they lost their other daughter too because she was then arrested. And even though her attorneys tried to get this case moved to juvenile court, that motion was denied. And even though after her trial was found that Claire was mentally ill, she was sentenced to 12.5 years to 40 years in prison after a third-degree murder conviction. This story once again just goes to show that you can't ever really tell who a person is based on what they post on social media, because you could never tell by Claire's post that she was about to murder her own sister. I mean, just take a look at this final video.
The most intense true crime case of 2023.
Buckle up. In October of 2023, three brothers with these names had kidnapped a man outside of his apartment in Florida, brought him back to their Airbnb, and when they removed his hood, realized they kidnapped the wrong person. The brothers actually kidnapped the intended target's co-worker, and instead of letting him go, they thought, hey, we could get some information from him. They began waterboarding, drilling him, and even pointing a G at his head, threatening his life if he didn't find their target's location. Eventually, he found out that his co-worker was at a club and he decided to bring them there. I'm not sure how, but in the process, the victim was able to call police and say that there was a bomb threat on the club they were going to in hopes of making police act quicker. This resulted in all three of the brothers actually being arrested, and no one surprisingly died. They're currently awaiting sentencing, and if convicted, they could receive up to life in prison. It's honestly just a miracle that no one died.
So apparently this surveillance footage captured two crimes at once. The first crime being a kidnapping. The second is committed by this lady who spilled a gallon of organs or blood. Let me know what you think in the comments below.
This is a deep dive into the world's most controversial haunted house and why the owner was just arrested for attempted murder. McCamey Manor opened in 2017 in Summertown, Tennessee. That's after spending a few years in San Diego where at least one woman accused them of assault with a deadly weapon. Since then, it's become the subject of numerous documentaries and news articles, including Hulu's Monster Inside, The Art of the Scare, and Netflix's Dark Tourist. The process to even get an appointment is insane. Apparently, there's a waitlist of 20,000+ people. 1. You have to be 21 or older or at least 18 with parents' consent. 2. A completed sports physical and doctor's note. 3. Pass a background check. 4. FaceTime to confirm your identity. 5. Proof of medical insurance. 6. Sign a detailed 40-page waiver with risks such as having your teeth extracted, being drugged, tattooed, having fingernails removed, and more. And before you even sign the waiver, you have to be vetted by a private Facebook group where you're given random, disgusting tasks to prove your loyalty. Here's an example posted on the owner's Facebook. Another woman had to film herself dangling by her ankles while eating night crawlers mixed with toothpaste and mustard. The final rule is pass a drug test the day of the challenge and bring a onesie. Admission is free. All you need is a 50-pound bag of dog food, which gets donated to a local animal shelter. And if you survive the 8 to 10 hours of physical and psychological torture, you win $20,000. But no one has, and according to owner Russ McCamey, no one ever will. Now, there are thrill seekers who have attempted this challenge more than once, but there are people with horrific stories about McCamey crossing the line, and many people want it shut down. Here's a story I found about a Colorado woman named Laura who attempted the challenge in 2016. She was waterboarded, tased, whipped, slapped in the face. At one point she was also submerged underwater, hanging by her ankles, and blindfolded with duct tape. Then they made her dig a hole with her bare hands and lie in it while they covered her face with dirt. All she had was a straw to breathe through for 30 minutes. Then someone took a file and started scraping at her McCamey Manor tattoo, which they had told her to get in the private Facebook group. Laura finally broke down when one of the actors was holding her throat, so she repeated the safe phrase over and over, which is supposed to make them stop. But apparently the actors continued to torture her for several more minutes. Everyone who visits McCamey Manor has to film an exit video. And before turning the camera on, Russ apparently told Laura she's not allowed to say what actually happened. She better say good things only or he'll sue her for $50,000. In 2023, after the Hulu doc premiered, the Tennessee Attorney General started to investigate them. Russ McCamey responded by suing the AG and Hulu for $8.4 million. Now let's finally talk about the recent arrest. On July 17th, police responded to McCamey's home about a domestic altercation. The report states that McCamey strangled his girlfriend to the point that she lost consciousness. 2 days after this, McCamey reportedly R-worded the victim and strangled her again until she lost consciousness. McCamey has been charged with attempted second-degree murder, R-word, and domestic assault. He's apparently out on bond right now, because he posted this statement to Facebook yesterday. He said, "I know everyone has a lot of questions concerning all the recent craziness. Always try to do the right thing and simply tell the truth. This is what I always try to do, and hopefully everything will turn out just fine." His lawyer said the charges are fabricated and that the truth will come out. There are many more stories, so let me know if you want a part 2.
Oh, y'all, Chris Watts got attacked in prison. Well, have you wondered why Chris Watts is so protected in prison, y'all? A lot of people wonder that. Like, why is he not touched? Why does he seem to be untouchable? Is someone getting paid? Is somebody, that he knows works there or something like that? No, it's the fact that he is in a solitary confinement part of the prison. He is in a maximum security prison in Waupun, Wisconsin, and in that prison he is in his own cell almost 24 hours a day, leaving 1 hour of that day where he gets to go outside that cell and I believe go take a shower, do a little stuff outside, maybe go to a court or something like that, but he's not out there long. Basically, most of his day is spent in his cell, and he mentioned this in the letters to Sherilyn Cato, that the time he spends in his cell is so long that he writes so many letters, he reads the Bible, wrote a whole devotional while he's in prison, and he often sees his kids' deceased ghost in prison. He basically said his ghost of his daughters visited him while he was in his cell. That's how much time he spends inside of his cell. So basically, he doesn't spend much time outside his cell for anybody to even get to him. But I did hear that somebody did get to him recently, but they haven't really confirmed that.
This video is about a half-hour long video that supposedly was sourced from a VHS tape that was found in the late 1980s or maybe even early 1990s. It was dubbed and redubbed for circulation and sale among bootleg collectors, often under the table at horror conventions or through mail-order tape trading communities.
As you might find around the jaw, it might be left there. Okay, so when you bring out the jaw, so I'll show you later. I'm in the real confidence of it.
Sometimes the tape was even sold in a video compilation along with other gruesome home videos, often bearing the title, "Ensuring Your Place in Hell."
So you can lose it real fast, alright? So when you find it, okay, the jaw is usually like that, around this shape, okay? It's like
the source of the original footage, as well as the identity of the young man in the video, still remains unknown, even up to 3 decades later.
This girl unalived her little brother, then consumed his private parts. This is 5-year-old Maikon Rauk and his 18-year-old sister Karina, and they both live with their mother Daniela in Brazil. On April 4th of 2019, Daniela had to do some shopping, so she left Maikon back at home with Karina. Daniela returned home over an hour later, and for some reason she wasn't able to open the front door, just wouldn't open. Daniela had yelled for her children to come help open the door for her, but Karina yelled back that she couldn't open it for her. Daniela started to get worried, so she had contacted her brother-in-law to come break down the door. Once they both got inside the home, they were met with a horrific scene. Karina had unalived Maikon, partially decapitated him, and mutilated him. The family dog started to attack Karina, and she retaliated and bit the dog. Karina then started to attack the uncle by throwing things at him and hitting him. She even tried to flee the scene, but she was luckily caught. Once police had arrived and saw Maikon's body, they saw that his body was surrounded by black candles. That's when they discovered that Karina had cut and eaten some parts of Maikon's body. Karina was quickly arrested and taken to the police station. At first, Karina refused to speak, but later on, she confessed everything. She stated that she asked Maikon if he wanted to come in her room to play some games, and of course Maikon agreed. Karina grabbed a pillow, pinned him down, and suffocated him. Karina then grabbed a knife and tried to remove his head. She had left Maikon partially decapitated. Karina then inserted the knife into his eyes and burned his feet with a lighter. She then removed his genitals and ate them. Karina was charged with aggravated homicide, attempted murder of her uncle, hiding a dead body, and biting the family dog. Karina was sent to a psychiatric hospital and she continues to receive medical, social, and psychological care.
This woman created such disturbing videos that she was sentenced to 50 years in prison. This story is truly one of the worst things that I've ever covered here on TikTok, so if you have a weak stomach or you can't hear about animal cruelty, please keep scrolling. So this is Ashley Richards from Houston, Texas. In 2015, she pleaded guilty to 4 counts of producing and 1 count of distributing these disturbing videos. And once again, I'm going to warn you, you can keep scrolling at any time before we get into these details. So this all started in 2012 when PETA, or the group known as People for the Ethical Treatment of Animals, contacted the Houston police about a video they had found online. This film was titled Ebony Kill Cat, and it depicted extremely sadistic and cruel acts being forced upon a kitten. So the police got into contact with the people from PETA and they then sent them 20 additional videos. These videos depicted the sadistic torture of various animals, including kittens, a fish, pigeon, crayfish, mice, a rabbit, all being tortured with different things like high heels, knives, screwdrivers, and pliers. In the videos, the woman that appeared in them was wearing a Mardi Gras style mask, and she would talk suggestively to the people watching this torture. Yes, that meant that there were paying customers out there that were paying this woman to produce these absolutely horrific videos. I cannot share the details of some of these videos. You can actually find the information online through news articles, but I mean, I think I changed as a person after reading these articles. Eventually, though, the police were able to track Ashley's IP address, which led them to her suburban home in Houston. This is an example of one of the messages she shared with the client. I mean, just, ugh. That led them to Brent Justice and Ashley Richards. These were the 2 that were producing these videos and selling them on a website online. And Congress had recently passed a bill making this specific type of video material, otherwise known as crush, illegal. So thankfully they were arrested. Shockingly though, Brent Justice, after the trial, he was actually sentenced to 50 years in prison. Shockingly though, Ashley, the woman who actually carried out these acts on camera, was only sentenced to 10 years in prison. Now, personally, this is one of the most disturbing things I've ever read about, and I definitely think she should have been in prison for a lot longer, but that's the justice system.